The phone rang at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, jarring me from my peaceful evening in my Denver apartment. Dad's voice cut through 6 months of silence with a demand that made my blood freeze. "Morris, you need to be at Jake's wedding in 3 weeks. We need the family to look perfect for Madison's parents." When I told him I wouldn't be attending, his response was swift and brutal: "Then consider yourself disinherited." The irony wasn't lost on me that my own family hadn't even noticed I'd moved from Illinois to Colorado half a year ago. I took a deep breath and delivered the one sentence that left him speechless: "You can't disinherit someone you've already forgotten exists." Silence stretched across the phone line for nearly 10 seconds before Dad hung up without another word. I stared at my phone screen, watching his contact fade to black, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete clarity about my place in the Henderson family hierarchy. I walked to my living room window, looking out at the Rocky Mountains silhouetted against the night sky. 6 months ago, this view had been my salvation. Now it felt like proof of a successful escape I hadn't even realized I'd needed. On my coffee table sat a stack of family photos I'd been meaning to put away, relics from a life that seemed increasingly foreign. Picking up the top photo, I studied our last Christmas gathering. There I was, positioned behind Mom's chair, half my face obscured by Jake's broad shoulder. My younger sister Emma beamed in the center, flanked by our parents, while Jake dominated the right side with his practiced smile. Even in family photos, I'd somehow become background decoration. The pattern had started early. I remembered my 8th birthday when Mom forgot to pick up my cake because she was busy driving Jake to baseball practice. I'd eaten grocery store cupcakes while Jake recounted his game-winning hit for the 100th time. 2 years later, when I won the state science fair, Dad missed the awards ceremony because Jake had a parent-teacher conference about his failing grades. Throughout high school, I maintained a 4.0 GPA while Jake barely scraped by with C-minuses. Yet every dinner conversation revolved around Jake's social life, his latest girlfriend, or his plans for college. When I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern with a computer science degree, the celebration lasted exactly one toast before shifting to Jake's real estate license exam, which he'd failed twice. The pattern continued into adulthood. Family gatherings became exercises in endurance where I'd sit quietly while Jake dominated conversations with stories about his successful sales and growing client base. Emma, now 26, had carved out her role as the family mediator, always trying to include me in conversations that inevitably circled back to Jake's latest achievements. Moving to Denver hadn't been planned as a test, but it became one. When TechFlow Solutions offered me a senior engineer position with a 30% salary increase, I accepted immediately. The company specialized in cloud infrastructure for healthcare systems, meaningful work that challenged me daily. I'd found an apartment in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, joined a hiking group, and started dating Sarah, a veterinarian I'd met at a coffee shop near the Denver Zoo. For the first time in my adult life, I felt visible. My colleagues sought my opinions, my hiking buddies included me in weekend plans, and Sarah genuinely enjoyed my company. We'd spend Saturday mornings exploring farmers' markets, then hike trails in the afternoon, talking about everything from sustainable agriculture to our shared love of mystery novels. The move itself had been remarkably simple. I'd hired movers, forwarded my mail, and updated my address with banks and employers. What struck me wasn't what I had to do, but what I didn't have to do. No family farewell dinner, no promises to visit soon, no requests for my new address. The first test came during Labor Day weekend. The family group chat, dominated by Mom's emoji-heavy messages and Jake's gym selfies, buzzed with barbecue plans. I simply didn't respond. Nobody asked where I was or why I wasn't participating. The conversation continued around my absence like water flowing around a stone. October brought my 29th birthday. In previous years, Mom would call precisely at 8:15 a.m., the time I was born, with a cheerful rendition of Happy Birthday. This year, my phone stayed silent until I called her at noon. She'd answered with genuine surprise, saying she'd been swamped with work and had completely lost track of dates. Jake had posted 16 Instagram stories that day, showcasing his workout routine and brunch with friends. Not one mentioned his brother's birthday. Thanksgiving proved the final confirmation. Instead of enduring another dinner where I'd be asked perfunctory questions before conversation shifted to Jake's latest real estate deals, I volunteered at the Denver rescue mission. Serving meals to homeless families felt more meaningful than sitting silently while Dad lectured about the importance of family traditions he'd never actually honored where I was concerned. The family group chat was full of photos from their Thanksgiving gathering. Mom had posted pictures of her elaborately set table. Jake had shared videos of Dad carving turkey, and Emma had uploaded a family selfie where my absence wasn't even acknowledged. No "Wish Morris was here" or "missing one of us today." Just a complete family unit that had seamlessly closed ranks around my missing space. 3 days later, I'd received a text from Emma asking if I was feeling okay because I'd been quiet lately. When I replied that I'd been busy with work, she'd responded with a thumbs-up emoji and hadn't followed up. That exchange crystallized something painful but liberating. My family had grown so accustomed to my peripheral presence that my absence barely registered as noteworthy. Tonight's phone call had shattered that comfortable neglect. Suddenly, after 6 months of radio silence, Dad needed me to play my role in the Henderson family performance. The irony was exquisite in its cruelty. For 29 years, I'd been the dependable background figure, always present but rarely acknowledged. Now, when my presence might actually matter, I was expected to materialize on demand like a piece of furniture moved from storage. But something had changed during my Colorado months. The man who used to swallow disappointment and show up anyway had been replaced by someone who understood his worth. The mountains outside my window reminded me daily that some distances were meant to be permanent. I opened my laptop and scrolled through Jake's social media posts from the past month. Photo after photo showed him with Madison, a stunning blonde who worked in marketing for her family's investment firm. They looked perfect together, all white teeth and carefully curated lifestyle shots. Madison's Instagram revealed a world of charity galas, weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard, and family dinners at country clubs. The engagement announcement had appeared on my timeline without fanfare. Jake and Madison posed on what looked like a yacht, her diamond ring catching sunlight as she displayed it prominently. The caption read, "She said yes to forever with the luckiest man alive." Comments poured in from friends and family, including enthusiastic responses from Mom and Dad. I'd scrolled through dozens of congratulatory messages before realizing mine wasn't among them. I hadn't even known they were dating seriously enough for marriage. That discovery led me down a rabbit hole of social media investigation that painted a disturbing picture. Jake's posts showed an increasingly lavish lifestyle that didn't match what I knew about entry-level real estate commissions. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, weekend trips to ski resorts. Either Jake had become remarkably successful very quickly, or he was living far beyond his means. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Tyler, who lived in Milwaukee and had always been the family truth teller. "Heard Dad called you about the wedding." Fair warning, things aren't what they seem with Jake in this whole Madison situation. "Call me if you want the real story." I stared at the message, feeling pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized existed start falling into place. Tyler had always been honest about family dynamics, probably because his own parents had divorced when he was 12, giving him perspective on family dysfunction that the rest of us lacked. Setting my phone aside, I walked back to the window. Denver sprawled below me, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Somewhere out there, Sarah was probably finishing her evening rounds at the animal hospital, checking on post-surgery patients, and ensuring every creature in her care felt safe and valued. The contrast with my family's conditional attention couldn't have been sharper. Tomorrow I'd call Tyler and get the full story. Tonight I'd go to bed knowing that for the first time in my life, I'd told my father exactly what I thought, instead of swallowing my words to keep the peace. The silence that followed my response had been worth 29 years of being overlooked. The truth was, finally simple, you can't break something that was never whole to begin with. Tyler answered on the first ring Wednesday morning, as if he'd been waiting for my call. Morris, thank God. I was hoping you'd reach out after Richard's little performance last night. You heard about that? Emma called me at midnight, completely freaking out about family drama. She said Dad was ranting about you being selfish and ungrateful. Tyler's laugh held no humor. Want to know what's really going on with your brother's fairy tale romance? I settled into my kitchen chair with my coffee, preparing for revelations I suspected would reshape everything I thought I knew about my family. Tell me everything. Jake's broke Morris, not just tight on cash, completely, utterly financially destroyed. Tyler's words carried the weight of insider knowledge. He's been lying about his real estate success for over 2 years. Those luxury apartment listings he posts. He's showing properties for other agents and pretending they're his sales. The designer clothes and fancy dinners, all credit cards maxed to the limit. My coffee grew cold as Tyler painted a picture of deception that explained so much about recent family dynamics. Jake's real estate career had started promisingly, but he'd made rookie mistakes that cost him clients and credibility. Instead of admitting failure and starting over, he'd doubled down on the facade of success. How bad is it financially? He owes $47,000 in credit card debt, 3 months behind on car payments for that BMW he drives, and get this, he's facing potential fraud charges for misrepresenting property values to investors. The State Real Estate Commission is investigating him. The scale of Jake's problems hit me like a physical blow. Does Madison know any of this? Are you kidding? She thinks she's marrying a successful entrepreneur who comes from a stable, loving family. Jake's told her you're some kind of tech executive who travels constantly for work. That's why your absence from family events hasn't seemed weird to her. I processed this information, feeling anger build in my chest. So the family has been covering for him? Morris, it gets worse. Much worse. Tyler's voice dropped to a whisper as if he was afraid of being overheard. Your parents have been bailing Jake out financially for the past 18 months. They've borrowed against their accounting firm, taken out a second mortgage on the house, and... He paused, clearly struggling with what came next. And what Tyler... They liquidated your grandmother's trust fund. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Grandmother Henderson had left me $80,000 when she died 3 years ago, money that was supposed to transfer to me on my 25th birthday. When that date came and went without any mention of the inheritance, I'd assumed the estate was still being processed. They forged my signature on the paperwork, Tyler continued. I know because my mom helped process some of the legal documents through her law firm. She thought you'd signed off on using the money for family emergency medical expenses that never actually existed. I stood up abruptly, knocking over my coffee mug. The dark liquid spread across my kitchen table like spilled blood, and I watched it drip onto the floor while my world tilted sideways. My own parents had stolen from me to fund Jake's lies and financial irresponsibility. There's more Morris. Madison's family is loaded. Old money, generational wealth. Her father runs a private investment firm that manages portfolios for Fortune 500 companies. They're traditional conservative people who value family unity and financial stability above everything else. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The wedding isn't just about love. It's Jake's escape plan. Exactly. Madison's parents have already given preliminary approval for the marriage, but they want to meet the whole family before the wedding. They specifically asked to meet both sons because they're considering offering family members positions in their company. Your parents have been telling them you're this successful tech executive, so your absence would raise serious questions about family cohesion. I sank back into my chair, overwhelmed by the scope of deception surrounding my brother's engagement. How do you know all this? Emma's been confiding in me for months. She's caught in the middle, knowing something's wrong but not understanding the full picture. Plus, my mom handles legal work for several wealthy Chicago families, and Madison's name came up in conversation. When Mom mentioned the Henderson connection, her colleagues had some interesting things to say about the family's expectations for this marriage. Through my apartment window, I could see morning joggers starting their routes through Cheeseman Park. Normal people living honest lives, completely unaware that somewhere in Illinois, my family was orchestrating an elaborate fraud to secure my brother's financial future through marriage. What about the business? How bad off are mom and dad? Tyler sighed heavily. Their accounting firm is struggling. Richard made some terrible investment decisions trying to quick flip properties with Jake's advice. They're behind on commercial rent, and Susan's been using business credit cards for personal expenses to maintain their lifestyle. The wedding costs alone are going to put them over the edge. How much are they spending on this wedding? $200,000. Madison's family is paying for most of it, but your parents are covering flowers, photography, and the rehearsal dinner. They've mortgaged everything they own to contribute their share because Madison's parents expect both families to invest equally in the celebration. The scope of my family's financial ruin was staggering. They'd stolen my inheritance, destroyed their business, and mortgaged their home, all to prop up Jake's fake success story long enough to marry him into wealth. Tyler, there's something else I need to know. Has anyone in the family actually tried to contact me over the past 6 months? Like, has anyone asked where I am or why I'm not around? And his silence stretched across the phone line before Tyler answered quietly. Morris, I hate to tell you this, but no. Emma mentioned you seemed distant a few times. But when I asked if anyone had actually reached out to check on you, she said they figured you were just busy with work. Your parents have been so focused on managing Jake's crisis that they honestly haven't noticed your absence. The confirmation of what I'd already suspected still stung. For 6 months, I'd been testing whether my family would notice my absence, and they'd failed completely. Only now, when they needed me as a prop in their performance for Madison's family, had anyone thought to pick up the phone. There's one more thing, Tyler said. Madison's parents specifically asked about you because they're looking for someone to head up their technology investment division. They were impressed by what your parents told them about your background. If they meet you and like you, they're prepared to offer you a position that would pay more than you've probably ever imagined. I laughed bitterly. So the one truthful thing my parents told Madison's family might actually benefit me. Ironic, right? Your real success is the only genuine thing in this whole charade. After hanging up with Tyler, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by spilled coffee and shattered illusions. My family hadn't just neglected me. They'd actively stolen from me while using my genuine achievements to legitimize their web of lies. The brother they'd always favored was a fraud, and the parents who'd always overlooked me were criminals. But something else was becoming clear. For the first time in my life, I held all the cards. My family needed me more than I'd ever needed them, and they had no idea how much I knew about their desperate situation. The question was, what was I going to do with that power? By Thursday afternoon, my phone had become a weapon of psychological warfare. The calls started with Mom at 7 a.m., her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. Morris, sweetheart, I don't understand why you're being so difficult about Jake's wedding. This is supposed to be a happy time for our family. I let her talk, noting how she framed my absence as difficulty rather than acknowledging 6 months of family neglect. She painted Jake's wedding as a sacred family obligation, while conveniently ignoring that I'd learned about the engagement through social media. I know you and Jake haven't always been close, but he's your brother. Family comes first, honey. We raised you better than this. The audacity was breathtaking. The woman who'd forgotten my birthday was lecturing me about family values while she and Dad had been stealing my inheritance to fund Jake's lies. Mom, when exactly did you notice I moved to Colorado? Silence. Then nervous laughter. Well, I knew you were traveling for work. You've always been so independent, we didn't want to interfere with your career. I've been gone 6 months. I wasn't traveling. I moved permanently. Oh, another pause. Well, you should have told us. We would have helped you move. The conversation continued for 20 minutes, with Mom alternating between guilt trips about disappointing the family and weak attempts to explain away 6 months of complete inattention. She hung up, promising to call back after talking to Dad. Jake called during my lunch break, his voice carrying forced enthusiasm that didn't mask underlying desperation. Bro, Dad said you're being weird about the wedding. Come on, man, this is my big day. Madison's really excited to finally meet you. Funny, I didn't know Madison knew I existed. Of course she does. I talk about you all the time. My successful tech genius brother who's always traveling for work. The lies rolled off his tongue effortlessly. Look, I know we haven't hung out much lately, but that's going to change. After the wedding, we're going to be better brothers, I promise. Jake's promises had always been worthless. Empty words deployed when he needed something. But this felt different, more desperate. He spent 15 minutes painting a picture of future brotherhood that bore no resemblance to our actual relationship history. Madison's parents are really looking forward to meeting you. They're big on family unity, and they specifically asked about both sons. You're really going to embarrass me by not showing up. Jake, be honest. When was the last time you called me just to check in? Not because you needed something, just to talk. The silence stretched long enough to answer my question. That's not fair, Morris. We're both busy adults, but family is family and I need you there. Need. The first honest word he'd spoken. Emma called that evening, and her disappointment cut deeper than our parents' manipulation. Morris, I can't believe you're doing this to Jake. This is his wedding day. How can you be so selfish? Emma, did you know I moved to Colorado 6 months ago? What? No, you didn't. You live in Chicago. I moved to Denver in May. I live here now. I have an apartment, a girlfriend, a whole life here that none of you know about because none of you have talked to me in half a year. I could hear her processing this information, the long pause revealing her growing awareness of the family's collective neglect. But I thought you were just busy with work. Mom and Dad said you were traveling a lot. Emma, think about it. When was the last time any of you asked me a personal question? When did anyone inquire about my life? My job? My happiness? When did anyone in this family treat me like more than a background character in Jake's story? Her voice became small, uncertain. We're not perfect, Morris, but we love you. This wedding is really important to Jake and to Mom and Dad. They've put everything into making it perfect. Everything including my inheritance from Grandma. Dead silence. How did you... Morris, what are you talking about? Ask Tyler. Better yet, ask Mom and Dad about the $80,000 they stole from me to pay for Jake's lifestyle. She hung up without another word. Friday brought escalating pressure. Richard called with barely contained fury, his voice sharp with authoritarian demand. Morris, I've had enough of this nonsense. You will be at your brother's wedding and you will smile and play your part as a loving family member. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this rebellion ends now. Or what, Dad, you'll disinherit me with what money after you spent my actual inheritance keeping Jake afloat. How dare you accuse us of... He started, then stopped abruptly. Even Richard wasn't shameless enough to deny documented theft. You will not ruin this wedding with your selfishness. Madison's parents are expecting to meet both sons. We've told them you're successful and accomplished, which you are, thanks to the education we provided and the values we instilled. The reframing was masterful. My genuine achievements became products of their parenting, conveniently ignoring years of neglect and the fact that I'd paid for most of my college education through scholarships and part-time jobs. If you embarrass this family, if you make us look dysfunctional in front of the Whitmore family, there will be consequences. We can remove you from business accounts, family insurance policies, and any future inheritance. What inheritance, Dad? You already stole it. The threats continued for another 10 minutes, escalating to suggestions that my absence would destroy Jake's marriage prospects and ruin everyone's financial future. The irony wasn't lost on me that the man who'd ignored me for 6 months was now claiming my presence was essential to family survival. Saturday brought calls from extended family members, each delivering variations of the same message. Aunt Patricia called to express disappointment in my selfishness. Uncle Jim phoned to remind me about family loyalty. Cousin Beth sent a long text about the importance of supporting family during major life events. The coordination was obvious. My parents had launched a full-scale campaign to make me the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. Each relative had been fed the same narrative. Morris was being difficult about attending his brother's wedding for unclear, selfish reasons. None of them knew about my stolen inheritance. None knew about Jake's financial fraud or my parents' desperate lies to Madison's family. They'd been recruited as unwitting soldiers in a manipulation war, believing they were encouraging family unity while actually pressuring me to participate in an elaborate deception. The breaking point came Sunday evening when Madison herself called. "Morris, this is Madison, Jake's fiancé. I hope you don't mind that I got your number from Jake." Her voice was warm, genuinely kind, completely unaware of the chaos surrounding her engagement. "I just wanted to reach out personally because I'm so excited to finally meet you at the wedding. Jake talks about you constantly. He's so proud of his successful brother who's making such a difference in the technology world." My heart broke for her. This sweet, intelligent woman had been fed a completely fictional version of my family relationships. In her mind, she was marrying into a close, successful family where brothers supported each other and parents raised accomplished children. "Jake's told me so much about your work developing healthcare software systems. My father's investment firm is actually looking for someone with your exact background to head up their technology division. He's really looking forward to talking with you about potential opportunities." The conversation revealed how completely Jake had fabricated our relationship. According to his version, we talked regularly about our careers, shared advice about life decisions, and maintained a close brotherhood despite busy schedules. Madison believed she was getting not just a husband but a loving brother-in-law who would become part of her extended family. "I know this sounds presumptuous since we haven't met, but I already feel like you're going to be such an important part of my life. Jake always says his brother is the smartest, most genuine person he knows." When I hung up 20 minutes later, I felt physically sick. Madison was an innocent victim in Jake's elaborate fraud, and my family's desperation had dragged her into a web of lies that would eventually destroy her trust and happiness. For the first time since this nightmare began, I understood the true scope of what was at stake. This wasn't just about my family's financial survival or social embarrassment. A genuinely good person was about to marry into a family built on deception, theft, and manipulation, and I was the only one who could prevent it. The question was no longer whether to attend the wedding. The question was whether to let Madison marry my brother without knowing who he really was. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day becoming a private investigator into my own family's crimes. Tyler had given me pieces of the puzzle, but I needed the complete picture before deciding my next move. My first call went to Northwestern University's alumni office, where a helpful administrator confirmed that Jake had indeed attended for 2 semesters before dropping out due to academic difficulties. This contradicted the family narrative of Jake choosing real estate over completing his business degree to get into the real world faster. Next, I contacted the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, which maintains public records of real estate license holders. Jake's license was currently under investigation for misrepresenting property values to potential investors. 3 formal complaints had been filed in the past 8 months, and his license was suspended pending resolution of the fraud allegations. The financial investigation required more creativity. I reached out to Marcus Webb, a college friend who now worked as a forensic accountant for a major Chicago firm. After explaining my situation, Marcus agreed to do some discreet research into my family's financial status. "Morris, what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this conversation understood. Your parents' accounting firm is in serious trouble. They've been juggling creditors for months and their business credit rating has dropped to junk status. The second mortgage on their house was processed 4 months ago for $120,000. The scope of their financial desperation was staggering. Marcus, is there any way to verify whether they forged documents related to my grandmother's trust fund? That's tricky territory legally, but I can make some calls. Give me a few hours." While waiting for Marcus to investigate, I focused on Madison and her family's background. Her father, William Whitmore, ran Whitmore Capital Management, a prestigious investment firm specializing in technology sector investments. The company managed over $2 billion in assets and had a reputation for extremely conservative, methodical approaches to both business and personal relationships. Madison's LinkedIn profile revealed an accomplished woman with an MBA from Wharton and 5 years of experience in strategic marketing for financial services companies. Her social media presence showed charity work, family gatherings at what appeared to be significant wealth levels, and a lifestyle of understated luxury. Most importantly, her posts revealed someone with strong values about honesty, integrity, and family loyalty. She'd written passionate messages about supporting local charities, celebrating long-term relationships, and the importance of building life partnerships based on truth and mutual respect. This made Jake's deception even more cruel. He wasn't just lying about money. He was betraying core values that Madison held sacred. Marcus called back with devastating news. "Morris, I've got confirmation on the trust fund situation. Your signature was definitely forged on estate liquidation documents. My contact at the probate court says the signatures don't match your documented handwriting from other legal documents, and the notarization was done by someone who's since had their commission revoked for fraudulent practices. Is there enough evidence for criminal charges?" "Absolutely. Document forgery, elder financial abuse, and potentially wire fraud if they moved money across state lines. Your parents could face serious jail time if you press charges." The knowledge that I could destroy my parents' lives with a phone call felt both empowering and terrifying. They'd stolen from me, lied to extended family, and were actively defrauding Madison's family, but they were still my parents. Tuesday. I decided to approach the situation from Madison's perspective. I created a fake LinkedIn profile and reached out to some of her professional contacts, claiming to be researching investment opportunities in Chicago real estate markets. The responses painted a picture of a woman universally respected for her intelligence, integrity, and kindness. Multiple people mentioned her excitement about her upcoming wedding and how happy she seemed with her fiancé's close family relationships and stable background. One contact, a colleague named Jennifer, was particularly revealing in her response. "Madison is over the moon about marrying into such a loving family. She's been telling everyone how excited she is to gain a brother-in-law who's as accomplished and caring as Jake always describes. She keeps saying she's finally found her perfect family." The cruelty of Jake's lies became even more apparent. Madison wasn't just being deceived about money, she was being sold a fantasy about family love and connection that didn't exist. Wednesday. I made the decision that would change everything. I called Madison directly using a different approach than I'd considered before. "Madison, this is Morris Henderson. I wanted to call because I've been thinking about our conversation, and there are some things about my family that I think you should know before the wedding." "Oh, Morris, it's so good to hear from you again. Is everything okay? Jake mentioned you might not be able to make it due to work commitments." The casual lies continued, even now. "Madison, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. How much do you know about Jake's financial situation?" Silence, then nervous laughter. "Well, he's doing really well with his real estate business. He's been very successful selling luxury properties. Why do you ask? Have you seen any documentation of his income, tax returns, bank statements, anything concrete?" "Morris, that's a strange question. We're getting married, so of course we've discussed finances. Jake's been very open about his success." I realized she was telling the truth from her perspective. Jake had been open by telling elaborate lies rather than by sharing actual financial documents. "Madison, I'm going to tell you something that's going to be very difficult to hear, but I need you to promise me you'll verify everything I say through independent sources." Over the next 30 minutes, I walked Madison through Jake's real financial situation, his suspended real estate license, and the investigation into his business practices. I provided her with specific case numbers and agency contacts she could call to verify the information. Her voice became smaller and more uncertain as the conversation continued. "But Morris, Jake just bought me a $5,000 necklace for our 6-month anniversary. He takes me to expensive restaurants all the time. How could he afford that if he's in financial trouble?" Credit cards, all credit cards that are maxed out. Madison, he owes nearly $50,000 in debt. The silence stretched for over a minute. I need to think about this, she said finally. Morris, why are you telling me this? Isn't Jake your brother? Because you seem like a genuinely good person who deserves to know the truth before making the most important decision of your life. After hanging up, I felt both relief and dread. I'd given Madison the information she needed to protect herself, but I'd also potentially destroyed my brother's last chance at financial salvation. Thursday brought the call I'd been expecting. Jake's voice was filled with panic and rage. What did you say to Madison? She's been asking me questions about my finances and demanding to see bank statements and tax returns. She's acting completely paranoid and suspicious. I told her the truth, Jake. About your debt, your suspended license, and the fraud investigation. You bastard, you've ruined everything. Do you know what this means? If Madison calls off the wedding, I'm finished. Completely finished. Maybe you should have thought about that before building your engagement on a foundation of lies. This is my life, Morris, the future. You had no right to interfere. And you had no right to steal my inheritance to fund your fake lifestyle. The conversation devolved into shouting and accusations, ending with Jake threatening to make me pay for destroying his plans. Friday afternoon, Madison called one final time. Morris, I've spent the past 2 days verifying everything you told me. I've seen the state records, talked to the investigating agencies, and confronted Jake about the truth. Her voice was steady, but tired. I want to thank you for being honest with me. It took courage to tell me something that could hurt your brother. What are you going to do? I'm calling off the wedding. Not just because of Jake's financial situation, though. That's serious enough. I'm calling it off because he's been lying to me about fundamental aspects of his life and character. If he could lie about something this significant, how could I ever trust him about anything? Relief washed over me. Madison would be protected from the worst mistake of her life. There's something else, Morris. I told my parents about our conversation, and they'd still like to meet you. They're impressed by your honesty and integrity, and they think you'd be exactly the kind of person they'd want leading their technology investment division. Would you be open to interviewing for the position? The irony was complete. Jake's lies had cost him his bride and his financial salvation, while my honesty had earned me the career opportunity he'd been counting on gaining through marriage. I'd be honored to meet with them. The offer stands whether or not the wedding happens. My father was very clear about that. He said anyone with the character to protect a stranger from fraud is exactly the kind of person he wants in his company. As I hung up the phone, I realized my family still didn't know that Madison had called off the wedding. Tomorrow's confrontation would be unlike anything in the Henderson family history. For the first time in my life, I'd chosen truth over family loyalty, and the consequences were about to reshape everything. Friday night, I sat in my Denver apartment planning what would either be the most important conversation or the most devastating confrontation of my life. Sarah was working late at the animal hospital, giving me space to think through strategy without distraction. I'd learned from watching my family manipulate me all week that information was power, but timing was everything. Madison had promised not to confront Jake about calling off the wedding until Sunday, giving me a window to control how the truth emerged. My first call went to a lawyer recommended by Marcus, a criminal defense attorney named Patricia Kellerman, who specialized in financial fraud cases. After explaining the forged trust fund documents, she was unequivocal about my legal options. Morris, you have an airtight case for criminal charges against your parents. Document forgery, theft of inherited assets, and fraudulent notarization are serious felonies in Illinois. With the evidence, your friend uncovered conviction would be virtually guaranteed. What kind of sentences are we talking about? Oh, for theft of this amount, combined with the aggravating factors of family relationship and document forgery, they could each face 3 to 7 years in prison. Their accounting firm would be shut down, professional licenses revoked permanently, and they'd face massive civil restitution requirements. The knowledge that I could destroy my parents' lives felt heavier than I'd expected. They'd wronged me terribly, but the thought of Mom and Dad in prison made my stomach turn. However, Patricia continued, if you wanted to use criminal charges as leverage for recovering your money and ensuring accountability without necessarily destroying their lives, there are options. Sometimes the threat of prosecution motivates people to make better choices about restitution and behavior changes. What do you recommend? Document everything. Prepare the paperwork for criminal charges, but use it strategically. Give them opportunity to make things right voluntarily before bringing down the full weight of the law. Saturday morning, I made a decision that surprised me. I called my father and told him I'd changed my mind about attending the wedding. Morris, are you serious? I'll be there, Dad, but I have some conditions. The relief in his voice was palpable. Of course, son, anything reasonable. We just want you there with family. First, I stay at the house instead of the hotel. I want time to reconnect with everyone before the ceremony. Absolutely. Your room is exactly as you left it. Second, I want to give a speech as Jake's brother during the reception. It's important to me to publicly express my feelings about family loyalty and brotherhood. That's a wonderful gesture, Morris. Madison's parents will love seeing how close our family is. Third, I want a private family dinner tomorrow night when I arrive. Just the four of us before all the wedding chaos begins. We need to clear the air and talk honestly about our relationships. Richard agreed to everything enthusiastically, probably because my conditions seemed to support the narrative of family closeness he'd been selling to the Whitmore family. He had no idea I was setting the stage to expose every lie they'd been living. My next call was to Sarah. I need you to come to Chicago with me. This is either going to go very well or very badly, and I need someone there who actually cares about my well-being. Morris, are you sure you want to walk into that situation? Your family sounds incredibly toxic. I'm sure, but I'm not going as the same person who left 6 months ago. I'm going as someone who knows his worth and won't be manipulated anymore. Sarah agreed to come, though she insisted we book a hotel room as backup in case staying at my parents' house became unbearable. Sunday, I spent the day preparing for psychological warfare. I printed copies of every document related to Jake's financial situation, my stolen inheritance, and my parents' business troubles. I prepared a detailed timeline of my family's lies and manipulation attempts from the past week. Most importantly, I wrote out exactly what I planned to say during my supportive brother speech at the wedding reception. My cousin Tyler called Sunday evening with updates from the family's panic mode. Morris, your parents are losing their minds trying to get everything perfect for Madison's parents. Susan has been cleaning the house for 3 days straight, and Richard keeps practicing conversations about the family's success and values. They have no idea the wedding's been called off. What about Jake? He's a wreck. Emma said he's been drinking heavily and snapping at everyone. Madison's been avoiding his calls since Friday, and he's starting to panic that something's wrong. And nobody knows I'm the one who told Madison the truth. Not yet, but Jake's paranoid and asking questions about who might have access to information about his finances. Your name hasn't come up, but that could change quickly. Monday afternoon, Sarah and I flew from Denver to Chicago. As our plane descended through gray clouds toward O'Hare Airport, I felt a strange combination of nervousness and clarity. For 29 years, I'd attended family gatherings as a supporting character in other people's stories. Tomorrow, I'd be the main character in a drama that would either heal my family or destroy it completely. The drive from the airport to my childhood home felt like traveling backward through time. Every familiar landmark reminded me of years spent seeking approval from people who'd never valued me properly. But instead of the old anxiety, I felt something new, complete certainty about my worth and complete clarity about my boundaries. Sarah squeezed my hand as we pulled into the driveway. Remember, you don't owe them anything just because they're family. You're here to tell the truth and see if they're capable of change. And if they're not, then you'll know you tried everything possible before walking away permanently. My parents greeted us at the front door with enthusiasm that felt performative rather than genuine. Mom hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes as she proclaimed how much she'd missed her middle son. Dad shook my hand formally, then embraced me with back patting that felt more like a business ritual than paternal affection. "You must be Sarah," Mom gushed, turning her attention to my girlfriend. "Morris has told us so much about you." The lie was smooth and automatic. I'd never mentioned Sarah to my parents because we'd never had conversations deep enough to include details about my personal life. Emma arrived an hour later and her reunion felt more genuine. She seemed genuinely happy to see me, though I noticed her eyes were red-rimmed and stressed. The weight of family secrets was clearly taking its toll on her as well. Jake appeared just before dinner, and his appearance shocked me. My usually perfectly groomed brother looked haggard with dark circles under his eyes and hands that trembled slightly when he thought no one was looking. He greeted me with forced enthusiasm that didn't mask his underlying panic. "Bro, so glad you decided to come. Madison's going to be so excited to finally meet you tomorrow." The casual continuation of lies even now was breathtaking in its audacity. Dinner conversation was surreal theater. Mom chatted brightly about wedding preparations while avoiding any mention of the massive debt those preparations had created. Dad discussed the wonderful Whitmore family and how fortunate we all were to be gaining such successful in-laws. Jake contributed nervous energy and repeated assurances about how perfect everything would be tomorrow. Sarah played her role beautifully, asking polite questions and making appropriate comments while observing the family dynamics with the objective eye of an outsider. I could see her cataloging the undercurrents of tension, desperation, and deception that permeated every interaction. After dinner, when my parents suggested we all watch old family videos to reminisce about happy memories, I decided the time for performance had ended. Actually, I think now would be good time for that private family conversation we discussed. Just the four of us. The temperature in the room dropped perceptibly. Sarah excused herself to our hotel, giving me a supportive kiss and a whispered, "Good luck," before leaving me alone with my family for the first time in years. What followed would either save the Henderson family or destroy it forever. The living room felt smaller than I remembered as my family arranged themselves like defendants awaiting judgment. Mom perched nervously on the edge of her favorite chair. Dad stood behind her with his hand on her shoulder, and Jake sprawled on the couch with forced casualness that didn't hide his growing anxiety. So, I began settling into the chair opposite them. "Let's talk honestly about why I'm really here." Emma shifted uncomfortably. "Morris, what do you mean? You're here for Jake's wedding." "Emma, when was the last time anyone in this room had a genuine conversation with me about my life?" Silence stretched until Dad cleared his throat. "Morris, we know we've been busy with our own responsibilities, but family is family. We're together now. Together now because you need me for something. Just like you needed my inheritance money when Jake got into financial trouble." The reaction was immediate and telling. Mom's face went white. Jake shot to his feet and Dad's hand tightened on Mom's shoulder like he was restraining himself from lunging forward. "How did you?" Mom whispered. "How did I find out you forged my signature and stole $80,000? Does it matter how I found out? What matters is that you did it." Jake's voice cracked with desperation. "Morris, you don't understand. I was in real trouble. The family was just helping me through a rough patch. By committing felony document forgery, by stealing money that belonged to me." Dad found his voice reverting to the authoritarian tone that had intimidated me as a child. "That money was needed for family emergencies. We intended to pay you back once Jake's business recovered." "What business?" Dad? "Jake's real estate license has been suspended. He's facing fraud charges. There is no business to recover." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma looked back and forth between Jake and our parents, clearly learning about her brother's situation for the first time. "Jake," she said quietly, "is that true?" Jake's composure finally cracked completely. "It's not that simple. I made some mistakes, but I was going to fix everything. The wedding would have fixed everything. By lying to Madison about who you are, by stealing her money the same way you stole mine." "I wasn't stealing from Madison. I love her. You love her money, and her family's money, and the life you thought you could have by lying your way into it." Mom started crying, Not the gentle tears of sadness, but the harsh sobs of someone whose world was collapsing. Morris, please. We can fix this. We're a family. Families work through problems together. Are we a family? Because families notice when someone moves 1,500 miles away. Families remember birthdays. Families don't steal from each other to cover up lies. The confrontation I'd been building toward for months finally erupted. Years of swallowed disappointments, ignored achievements, and peripheral existence poured out in a torrent of accumulated pain. Do you know what I did for Thanksgiving? I volunteered at a homeless shelter in Denver, serving meals to people who had nothing. And it felt more like family than any dinner I've had in this house, because those people actually saw me as a human being worth talking to. Emma was crying now, too. Morris, I'm sorry. I know we haven't been good about staying in touch, but we love you. Emma, you didn't even know I moved. None of you knew because none of you cared enough to ask me a personal question in 6 months. I've been testing you, waiting to see how long it would take anyone to notice I was gone. The answer is you never would have noticed if you didn't need me for this wedding performance. Dad's face was red with anger and embarrassment. Morris, you're being dramatic. We've been dealing with business pressures and family obligations. We can't monitor everyone's every move. Monitor, Dad. I'm talking about basic human connection. When was the last time you asked me how I'm doing? When did you last show interest in my life? My goals? My happiness? The questions hung in the air unanswered because we all knew the answers. Jake suddenly stood up, his face twisted with desperation and rage. This is all your fault. Everything was going perfectly until you started interfering. Madison loves me. We could have been happy. Madison loves the person you pretended to be. The real you is someone who steals from family and lies to the woman he claims to love. I was protecting her. She didn't need to know about every little financial problem. $50,000 in debt isn't a little problem, Jake. Fraud charges aren't little problems. And stealing your brother's inheritance isn't a little problem. Emma looked around the room with growing horror. How did our family become this? How did we turn into people who lie and steal from each other? It was the first genuine question anyone had asked all evening. Emma, we became this because no one ever held anyone accountable. Jake got away with lying because Mom and Dad covered for him. Mom and Dad got away with stealing from me because they knew I'd never fight back. Everyone got away with ignoring me because I always showed up anyway. I stood up feeling lighter than I had in years. But I'm not showing up anymore. Not for performances, not for lies, and not for people who only value me when they need something. Mom looked up through her tears. Morris, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done being the forgotten son who exists to make the family look complete when it's convenient. Jake's face contorted with rage. You're destroying everything. Do you know what happens if this wedding gets called off? Do you know what Madison's family will think of us? The wedding is already called off, Jake. The silence that followed was absolute. What? Mom whispered. Madison knows everything. I told her about your debts, your suspended license, the fraud investigation, all of it. She called off the wedding on Friday. Jake's reaction was immediate and violent. He lunged at me across the coffee table, screaming incoherently about his ruined life and destroyed future. I stepped aside easily, letting his momentum carry him into the wall behind me. You psychopath. You destroyed my life. You ruined everything. He scrambled to his feet and swung wildly at my face. I caught his wrist and held it, shocked by how weak and desperate he felt. Jake, stop. You're embarrassing yourself. I'll kill you. I'll actually kill you for this. Dad and Emma rushed forward to pull Jake away from me, but the damage was done. My golden brother, the family favorite, had just threatened murder in front of witnesses because I'd told his fiancée the truth about his character. Morris. Dad said, still restraining Jake, tell us this is some kind of misunderstanding. Tell us Madison is still planning to go through with the wedding. There's no misunderstanding. Madison spent 2 days verifying everything I told her. She realized she couldn't marry someone who'd been lying about fundamental aspects of his life and character. Mom collapsed back into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. We're ruined. We're completely ruined. You ruined yourselves with lies and theft. I just refuse to help you lie anymore. Jake finally stopped struggling against Dad's grip, but his eyes held pure hatred as he stared at me. I hope you're happy, Morris. I hope destroying your brother's life makes you feel big and important. I didn't destroy your life, Jake. I just stopped enabling your lies. Emma looked around the room at our devastated family and asked the question that cut to the heart of everything. What happens now? Now you all face the consequences of your choices. Jake faces his fraud charges without a rich wife to bail him out. Mom and Dad face their business debts without Madison's family money. And I go back to Denver to continue building a life with people who actually value me. As I walked toward the door, Mom called out one final plea. Morris, please, don't leave like this. We can fix everything. We can be a real family. I turned back to look at them, Jake seething with rage, Dad trying to maintain dignity while his world crumbled, Mom begging for mercy she'd never shown me, and Emma finally seeing the truth about the family she'd idealized. We had 29 years to be a real family. You chose favoritism, lies, and theft instead. Some choices don't get second chances. I walked out of my childhood home for the last time feeling not sadness but profound relief. The family that had never valued me was finally learning what life looked like without me in it. Tomorrow they'd face the wedding guests, the Whitmore family, and the complete collapse of everything they'd built on lies. But that would be their crisis to handle. I was finally free. 3 months later, I sat in my expanded Denver apartment reading the final settlement documents that closed the most painful chapter of my life, while opening doors I'd never imagined possible. The legal resolution had been swifter than Patricia Kellerman predicted. Faced with documented evidence of document forgery and the threat of criminal prosecution, my parents had agreed to full restitution plus damages. They'd liquidated their remaining business assets and taken out a third mortgage on their house to repay the $80,000 they'd stolen plus another $40,000 in interest and legal penalties. Jake had pled guilty to real estate fraud charges in exchange for 2 years probation and mandatory financial counseling. His real estate license was permanently revoked, and he'd moved back in with our parents while working as a delivery driver to pay court-ordered restitution to his victims. But the real victory wasn't financial, it was personal. Sarah walked into the living room carrying 2 cups of coffee and settled beside me on the couch we'd picked out together last month. How are you feeling about everything? Free, I answered honestly. For the first time in my life, completely free. The past 3 months had been transformative in ways I couldn't have anticipated. William Whitmore had been true to his word about the job opportunity, and I'd started as Director of Technology Investments at Whitmore Capital Management 6 weeks ago. The position paid nearly double my previous salary and involved work that felt genuinely meaningful, helping innovative healthcare companies access the capital they needed to develop life-saving technologies. Madison and I had developed an unexpected friendship built on mutual respect and shared experience of surviving family dysfunction. She'd moved to San Francisco to start fresh, and had sent me a thank you card that I'd framed in my office. Morris, thank you for choosing my happiness over your family's comfort. True friends are people who tell you the truth, even when it's hard to hear. Emma had been the most surprising development. 2 weeks after the wedding disaster, she'd called to apologize and ask if we could rebuild our relationship independently from our parents. She'd moved to Milwaukee to be closer to Tyler, and had started therapy to process years of family dysfunction she'd never acknowledged. I finally understand what you were trying to tell us, she'd said during our most recent phone call. I spent so much energy trying to keep everyone happy that I never noticed how unhappy I was or how badly we were treating you. Our weekly conversations had become the most genuine family relationship I'd ever experienced. Emma was discovering who she was outside of her role as family mediator, and I was learning what it felt like to have a sibling who actually cared about my thoughts and feelings. The hiking group I'd joined had become a chosen family of sorts. Every Saturday, 8 of us explored different Colorado trails, sharing stories, and supporting each other through life's challenges. These friends knew nothing about my family's wealth or status. They valued me for my humor, my reliability, and my willingness to carry extra water for anyone who needed it. Sarah and I had moved in together after 2 months of dating, a decision that felt natural rather than rushed. She'd helped me process the emotional aftermath of cutting ties with my parents while never pushing me to forgive before I was ready. "I keep thinking about what your therapist said about chosen families," Sarah mused, curling up against my shoulder. "How the people who truly love us are the ones who see our worth even when we can't see it ourselves." Dr. Jennifer Martinez had become another crucial part of my support system. The family trauma therapy sessions had helped me understand that my parents' neglect wasn't my fault, and that protecting myself from toxic relationships was self-care, not selfishness. "Morris," she'd said during our session last week, "you spent 29 years trying to earn love from people who were incapable of giving it. Now you're surrounded by people who love you simply for being yourself. That's not coincidence, that's you finally understanding what you deserve." The scholarship fund I'd established with part of my legal settlement had already helped 12 overlooked middle children attend college. Reading their application essays reminded me that family dysfunction was unfortunately common, but so was resilience. These kids would break cycles of neglect and emotional abuse that might have continued for generations. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Update on the Illinois Henderson clan. Jake got a second job at a grocery store. Mom started seeing a therapist and Dad actually asked about your job last week. Emma says they're slowly starting to take responsibility for their choices." I showed the message to Sarah, who squeezed my hand supportively. "How does that make you feel?" "Hopeful for them, but not responsible for them anymore," I answered after thinking about it. They need to change for themselves, not to win me back. The distinction was crucial. For months after the wedding confrontation, I'd felt guilty about the pain my family was experiencing. Therapy had helped me understand that their consequences were results of their choices, not my actions. I'd simply refused to enable their dysfunction anymore. A year later, I received a letter that surprised me. It was from my mother, written in her careful handwriting on stationery I recognized from my childhood. "Dear Morris," it began, "Dr. Patel has been helping me understand how badly I failed you as a mother. I want you to know that I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness or reconciliation. I'm writing because you deserved better from me, and I need you to know that I finally understand that. You were the most thoughtful, intelligent, and caring of my children, and I treated you like you were invisible. I favored Jake because his needs felt more urgent, and I ignored you because your competence made me assume you didn't need attention. I was wrong about everything. I hope you found the family you deserve, people who see how special you are. You were always the best of us, Morris. I just wasn't wise enough to see it." The letter had made me cry, not from sadness, but from relief. My mother finally understood what I'd been trying to tell them for years. 6 months after receiving the letter, I decided to visit Chicago for Tyler's wedding. It would be my first time seeing my parents since the confrontation, and I wasn't sure what to expect. The reunion was awkward, but civil. Mom had lost weight and looked older, but her eyes held something I'd never seen before: genuine remorse. Dad was quieter than I remembered, less commanding, and more thoughtful in his words. Jake and I had a brief conversation that felt like closure rather than reconciliation. "Morris, I know I can never undo what I did to you and Madison," he said. "I was so focused on getting what I wanted that I forgot about being someone worth wanting. I'm working on that now. I hope you find happiness, Jake. Real happiness, not the kind that depends on lying to people. You too, brother. You deserve all the good things you've found." We shook hands, and I felt the weight of 29 years of sibling rivalry finally lift from my shoulders. During the reception, Emma pulled me aside for a private conversation. "Morris, I need to tell you something. Your letter last year, the one where you explained what it felt like to be invisible in our family, it changed my life. I've shared it with my therapist, and we've been working through how growing up in that environment affected all of us." "How are you doing with everything?" "Better. So much better. And I want you to know that watching you choose yourself over family dysfunction taught me that I could make the same choice. I'm dating someone now who actually listens when I talk and remembers things I tell him about my day. Emma, that's wonderful. You saved yourself, Morris. But in doing that, you also saved me. I finally understand what healthy relationships look like because I watched you build one with Sarah. As Sarah and I flew back to Denver that evening, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed since that phone call 2 years ago. The man who had spent decades accepting scraps of attention from people who didn't value him had become someone surrounded by genuine love and respect. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked, noticing my contemplative mood. "I'm thinking about how the worst thing that ever happened to me, my family's betrayal, led to the best thing that ever happened to me, learning what I'm actually worth." "And what are you worth?" "Everything I've built here. This relationship, my work, my friendships, my peace of mind. I'm worth people who choose me every day, not people who only remember I exist when they need something." The plane descended through clouds toward Denver, and I watched the city lights spread out below us like earthbound stars. Somewhere in those lights was the life I'd built from scratch, filled with people who valued Morris Henderson not for what he could provide, but for who he was. The family I'd been born into had taught me what love wasn't. The family I'd chosen had taught me what love was. Both lessons had been necessary, but only one had set me free. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? How do you know when it's time to protect yourself from toxic relationships, even when they involve people you love? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might help someone else who's struggling with similar difficult family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family dysfunction and building the life you deserve. Share this with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by how others treat them. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone else's harmful behavior, even when that person is family. You deserve relationships built on respect, honesty, and genuine care. Remember, you can't change people who don't want to change, but you can always choose to surround yourself with people who already see your value. Choose wisely, choose courageously, and choose yourself when necessary. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.